So years ago, a woman came up to me in coffee hour. This was in the congregation I used to serve in East Tennessee. And she was in a wheelchair, and she rolled up, and she said, "Preacher, I've got some feedback for you." Coffee hour is a great place for feedback if you haven't tried it yourself. Said, "Preacher, I've got some feedback for you." And I leaned in. This is somebody, she was a force in the community. She was a leader, one of those wise elders you want to kind of pay attention to when she speaks up. And so she said, when you speak up there about beloved community, sometimes I get the feeling that in this vision, I'm no longer in my wheelchair, this vision of yours that you're talking about. And she said, I need you to know, I don't want to be healed of this. When I could walk, she said, I was so often impatient and ambitious and sharp-elbowed, and this chair, she said, has slowed me down. It's opened me up. She said, in 15 years of rolling through the world, I've learned compassion and mutual care like never before in my life. So she said, save any prayers you might have or any thoughts you might have to change my condition. She said, instead, I want you to pray that others have received the gifts I have received. I still don't know exactly what she heard from me that she was responding to, and I also believe her. Of course. I realized I had been steering by and navigating by a bad map, that old map that perhaps many of us have, which is drawn by convention and not by the spirit of love, a map that confuses perfection with holiness and obedience with belonging. And the more I steered by this map, it wasn't only hurtful to others, though it was also taking a toll on me in my life. I mean, imagine when you understand the depths of life and the promise of love in cramped and brittle ways, what a toll that can take on how things go for you. I'd lived with anxiety, with shame, with that hounding message of not enough, and I wonder if anybody else here in the room has been familiar with that kind of bad map. Maybe early on you were handed a version of faith that said, blessing looks like control, or goodness means fitting in, or wholeness means passing for perfect. And maybe you learned to hide your tenderness, your difference, your desire, because somebody told you that God couldn't bear them. Even now, long after perhaps, you want to believe that you've outgrown all those childish things. Sometimes in the night or on a quiet morning perhaps, it still hums there beneath that joy in your life saying, careful, don't shine too bright, watch out, not enough. And so here we are at UUCA, and I'm thinking about this morning like going into the shop for an alignment. A couple of weeks ago on I-40, my car hit this loose tire from a truck, and I had to take it in to an alignment. And that's how I'm thinking about this morning, to the extent that somehow, accidentally, that old bad map has come up for us again. We're just kind of coming back to what love is about. Because somewhere along the line, God, the concept of God, got gentrified, moved out of the neighborhood of our bodies and turned into a landlord of perfection, charging rent that we could never pay. The name that once meant sacred breath and belonging became instead weaponized as a tool of judgment and exclusion. And yet for many of us, when we seek the depths of life, when we seek out the divine, there is something in us that still stirs. Beneath disbelief, for some, there is yet longing for the holy that is here with us, breathing life into clay and calling our bodies good. In the long history of theology, every time holiness leaves the body, somebody gets hurt. Too many have been told that their bodies were too much, that their love was a liability, that their lives are a problem to fix. But the deeper truth keeps rising. We don't need a God of escape. We need a God that embodies, one who shows up in our scars and our stretch marks, our laughter and fatigue, our grief and our stories. So say it with me. My body's not a problem.
My body is not a problem.
This body is a blessing.
This body is a blessing.
And as I told people in the first service, I'm not talking about my body, but all of us. So, two streams of good news as we reclaim faith for ourselves and for our own journeys. Help us remember. One is queering faith, and the second, disability liberation theology. First, queering faith. Queering faith is not just about queer folks, though it includes all that fierce and fabulous beauty. Queering faith instead is a way of seeing anew, of revisiting old stories, old terms with fresh eyes. Queering faith is a way of refusing to be trapped by categories and binaries. It moves us from either or to both and, as the transgender theologian M. Barclay wrote. When Genesis says that God created the heavens and the earth, it is very useful to look at the word "and," because the map of convention would like us to say either or, this, that, two separate things. But instead, says Barclay, what they say is, in the use of this word "and," it actually is like the "and" in Alpha and Omega. It is a bridge, not a border. It suggests a spectrum. It suggests a vast infinitude therein. Imagine proclaiming and celebrating a God of the marshland, a God of twilight, a God of both and disability liberation theology, because I'm watching the clock. Theologian Nancy Iceland had this main thing to say. She said, holiness, how we conceive it, is not about perfection, but about participation. And Nancy Iceland, the founder of disability liberation theology, said, just look to the story in the Christian tradition of the resurrection. The body of Jesus isn't sort of spiffed up and made clean like it's been through the car wash. Instead, this is a body with scars, with stories to tell. It is on that basis, with that body, with that life and that reality, that we are invited, she said, to forge community. In other words, we are not asked to shove away or to neaten over or to smooth over what is real about us, but instead to reclaim it and harness it for the service of love. I want to say all of this because today at Pride, we have good news to share. And it's not good news that somehow we have survived and we move all through this despite the divine. It's that we are reclaiming 2,000 years and more of our Unitarian Universalist heritage, which has been at this big love business for a very long time. For people who've been shut down, shut out, shunned, and shamed, we've got good news. That we follow and practice and share a love that leaves nobody out. And so what now if we are to reclaim this, if we are to take this out into the world? If the holy lives in our bodies, the start of the work is not theoretical but deeply personal, because for many of us that old map still whispers, the one of fear and control, saying, stay small, stay safe, stay polite, stay afraid. But you know and I know the soul was never meant to live on a leash. On Pride and every day before we move out into the streets, the first act of liberation is simple remembering. Your breath belongs here. Your joy has a job. Your story is sacred. On Pride and every day before moving out in the streets, the first act of liberation is simple reminding. Pride is celebration and reclamation. Your body as holy ground. Your delight as resistance, your voice as revelation. And so here is the challenge of living in the light of the holy, conceived in this way and reclaimed as we do here. It is that to be fully and fiercely yourself without armor and apology. It is to be the one on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays whose presence says, I'm not here to perform, I'm here to belong. Who shows up not seeking any longer perfection, but instead deep presence. Not purity, but a new kind of power. Power soft enough to heal, yes, and also strong enough to hold when the storm sweeps through again. One thing I've learned, and maybe you have as well, is that the cost of pretending is always higher than the cost of being real. When you stop contorting to fit a smaller story, others are also invited to breathe free as well. So hand over heart, this is where the sacred lives, right here in our lives. You don't have to chase it or earn it or prove anything. Let remembrance steady your voice, widen your welcome, make you impossible to shame and unstoppable in compassion. The world doesn't need perfect people, but instead people who are rooted, radiant, and real, people who refuse to be smaller than love. Because when fear freezes, we're going to thaw. When cruelty hardens, we're going to soften. When shame silences, we are going to sing. We are going to move toward those frozen places where people have gotten stuck on their spiritual journeys with warmth and with touch, with truth that says, hey, you're still alive. Come on. Come on. Like some holy game of freeze tag, hey, freedom. Move again. Not because we imagine ourselves to be saviors, but because somebody, perhaps someone in this room, once unfroze us as well. Somebody, perhaps in this room, once loved us back into being. So we're just going to pass it on with gratitude for all who came before us, whose dream we are living. In this age of anxiety and authoritarianism, now it's our turn. In shelters and schools, in boardrooms and back rooms, to declare the body isn't the problem, the body is the blessing. Love isn't a luxury, love is the lifeline. Liberation doesn't come later, liberation is today. UUCA, this is who we are. This is our mission. We don't shrink down to fit love into some box. We stretch love wide enough for the whole world. We're here to thaw the frozen, here to mend what's broken, here to embody the love that won't back down. And if you listen, you can already hear the anthem rising up. Diana Ross echoing back to us our collective courage. This is not just a song, this is a summons in your life. The sound of souls unfreezing, the sound of love taking the street, the sound of this congregation reclaiming its soul. So come out, radiant hearts, come out, wounded healers, come out all who was told you were too much or not enough. Come out this morning and let your life sing, because love is on the move, because we're on the move. And today and every day, no power of fear, no empire of shame is ever going to hold us down.